everybody, welcome to the Garage. I'm Jeremy Cordo. Peter Clayton is here, and the Court of Public Opinion is in session. The most powerful court in the land, because you make it so. We had a few interesting responses from yesterday's show. Was that a record? How long did we go? I can't remember.
A few seconds short of 24 minutes.
A few seconds short of 24, because we started out doing 10-minute programs. We're at an interesting crossroads with what we're doing. We're going to bring it together and maybe have it audio and visual, or audio-visual, or, you know, watch this space. It's going to get more interesting, I promise you. Hopefully we'll be able to take some phone calls, play some music, have some guests. Yeah, it's got real potential. Real potential. Before we get into the stuff of the day, March 31, I think that is the end of the month, isn't it? Yep. The Eiffel Tower was officially opened in Paris, built for the exhibition. And funnily enough, it was only built for the exhibition. It was never meant to stay there. We were going to take it down afterwards. The Eiffel Tower, 300 metres high. It retains the record for the tallest man-made structure, and it held that record for 41 years. 1889 was when it opened. 1889. Ford publicly unveils its V8 engine. Its first V8 engine, 1932. What was that in, I wonder? A Pilot, maybe? Don't know, maybe a custom line, could have been. Anyway, that was in 1932. 1880, the first town to claim to be completely illuminated by electric lighting was a place in Indiana called Wabash. I've heard of the Wabash Cannonball. Wabash. 1880. Be a novelty. You'd get people flooding into that little town to have a look at the electric street lighting, and everyone else would have had the benefit of it as well. Electricity, affordable electricity, is a wonderful thing, wonderful asset. Not only the prosperity of a town, but the prosperity of a city and a country, and indeed the world, is based on it. But don't let the greenies hear that. Mind you, I am a greenie, but I'm not stupid. Let's see, 1939 it is, I think. 1939, The Hound of the Baskervilles, first of 14 films starring Basil Rathbone as Sherlock Holmes and Nigel Bruce as Dr. Watson, is released. He was a very good Sherlock Holmes. He was the archetypical kind of Sherlock Holmes. I liked him. Ronnie Corbett, I liked him too. British comedian, the two Ronnies, dies at 85, 2016. That was a brilliant show. I liked that, the two Ronnies. Nothing like that anymore. Inspirational stuff. Ewan McGregor, Scottish actor, born in Perth, Scotland, 1971. Isaac Newton, English physicist, mathematician, astronomer, gravity, law of motion, all that sort of stuff. He dies at 84. 1727. 1727 was the year. Shirley Jones, American Academy Award-winning actress. Elmer Gantry. Oh, I remember Elmer Gantry. Who was in Elmer Gantry? Who was Elmer Gantry, the guy? I think it was a takeoff of all of those high-powered American table-thumping religious icons. It was a sort of a send-up in a way, but most interesting. Anyway, Shirley Jones was probably best remembered not for Elmer Gantry, but for the Partridge Family. 1934. 1934 she was born. Charlotte Bronte, the novelist, Jane Eyre dies at 38 in the year 1855. Paul Simon sells his entire song catalogue of over 400 songs to Sony Music Publishing. Pete, what do you reckon that could be worth?
Well, it was millions, I think, wasn't it?
Oh, I think it was hundreds of millions.
Yeah.
It doesn't say here, it says an undisclosed amount. But Paul Simon was a great composer, let alone entertainer. Al Gore, American politician and environmentalist. Oh dear. Vice President from 93 to 2001, born Washington 1948. US President Joe Biden overturns Trump's restrictions on transgender people serving in the armed forces. Now, I don't know what you do about that. Transgender people serving in the armed forces. They had this thing about homosexuals for years where, you don't ask and you don't tell. But really, it would be singularly difficult for the men and women, the serving men and women of the armed forces, to be surrounded by people who were somewhat gender confused. It'd be hard to know what the hell to do. The USSR officially offers to join NATO in 1954. That would have been interesting. The Golden Raspberry Awards of this is for the worst movies ever made, 1981, and Can't Stop the Music took the top prize. And Elton John and George Clooney call to boycott hotels owned by the Sultan of Brunei after Brunei plans new anti-gay laws to make homosexualism punishable by death. Well, in that part of the world, they are very, very strict about a whole lot of things. I don't think they actually jump up and down too much in that part of the world, regardless of criticism. They just do their own thing, whether you agree with it or not. And oh, by the way, you probably better not disagree with it. Pretty risky. Now, what's happening? Oh, yes, I had a few comments about the partners, the trading partners of Australia, who might take exception if we did not have some manic climate change policy. Well, I don't know. I've tried to answer everybody. But the question was trading partners. Now, basically, they all sort of say, how is it likely to sit with our trading partners? Now, the point is, it's not our trading partners that we have to worry about. It isn't. It's our trading competitors. We don't want to give them an advantage. We do not want to hobble ourselves. 8 out of 10 of our trading competitors would be advantaged by any of or all of these Labour Greens taxes, all to achieve nothing. It's like the pursuit of the renewables. Creates harm and expense, achieves nothing. Climate change is real and natural. So too is voodoo economics and voodoo politics. Labour have the potential and now the power to turn Australia, sadly, into another Argentina. Or worse still, Zimbabwe. CO2, which is what this is all about. CO2 is a natural gas. It is, I've heard it described as, a plant food. A plant food. Colourless and odourless. This government is prepared to sacrifice jobs and prosperity for nothing. 1.3% of global emissions. No other country is doing anything like these sort of taxes that the Labor and the Greens are talking about. It is not about the decarbonisation of Australia. And particularly I want to address those people who communicated with me on this. It is not about the decarbonisation of Australia. It is about the deindustrialisation of Australia. Just like the Lima Declaration. This is deep, deep in their DNA. And what they did to jobs and industry back then was criminal. But these days, of course, you don't find any journalists who remember. I don't think even the politicians on the right side of politics, as opposed to the left side of politics, I don't think they remember either. But you can look it up. Just Google it. Just Google the Lima Declaration and see what it was that back in '72 we signed up to the detriment of the men and the women and the businesses of this country. And that was an elected government that took that decision without bringing it to the Parliament and getting a vote on it. We never got a vote on it. I was only a kid. But gee, I remember the utopia that existed before Whitlam. All right, it wasn't exciting. It wasn't progressive. But we all had jobs and we had prosperity. The outgoing Sex Discrimination Commissioner says every woman over 50 would have stories to tell about sexual harassment. I don't doubt that, really. Sarah Ferguson did not mention the fact that most men over 50 would probably have the same problem, the same sort of stories to tell. Please be fair and even-handed. But it's not something that I would expect from the ABC, sadly. I wish Ida would clear out that lot, but anyway. As I've said on this program several times, the Libs, the Liberal Party, is in trouble, serious trouble. I don't know how they lost their way. They're losing elections, but they lost their way before they started losing the elections. I'm fond of saying to you cause and effect. The effect is losing the election. The cause is losing the way. They have. I don't believe, as a lot of people are saying, that they have to lurch to the right or the extreme right. I don't even know what that is. All they've got to do is to go back to common sense values. The common sense values of Menzies and John Howard, the middle road, the commonly held popular views, reasonableness, you know, no woke, no political correctness, no welcome to country, no original owners, no thanks to the elites, the movers and the shakers, the consultants, the spin. Get rid of all of that crap. Just get rid of it. Don't give it lip service. Don't do this nod and a wink thing that you do. You can't avoid offending people. Don't worry about it. You could find no better example of what I'm talking about than what's going on in Melbourne at the moment with the Liberal Party. This woman, Moira Deeming, her name, they ranted and raved and thumped their chest because she went to a meeting which was a demonstration. Something about pro-women and something about pro-gays and trans women, and then some people turned up who pretended or who were Nazis, I don't know, or extremists or white supremacists. How, if you go along to a discussion, a public discussion, can you be held responsible for who gate crashes it? How? Doesn't make any sense. Anyway, Moira Deeming was going to be sacked, but they compromised and said, we'll suspend you for 9 months. She should have told them to stick it. Just stick it. It's easy for a political party or a business or any organisation to lose its way, but this was a very public example of losing your way. The Liberal Party has a very clear and attractive history. It's a party of free enterprise. It's the party of reward and incentive, a broad church, as John Howard used to describe it, freedom of speech, freedom of ideas. You do not penalise failure, but you certainly don't encourage it. It's a political party that would not have a bar of any of this woke rubbish. All that stuff, the LGBTIQ, climate change, voice to parliament, weaponising of minority issues. The voice to parliament. Now, it's about perspective. You can be a broad church, but please don't let the extremists within your broad church poison the font. I don't know how else to explain it. You have to have a strong leader who keeps the whole thing in balance. I suggest that the Liberal Party goes and sits down with John Howard or Jeff Kennett, and there are probably other examples as well, but I can't think of them, and talk about liberalism, which in another way is freedom. You see, within a dogma, and socialism is a dogma, liberalism is a freedom. But within a dogma, you cannot have any freedom of thought. Catholicism, communism, socialism, fascism, there is no freedom of thought. I would be all for freedom of thought. The safeguard mechanism, which I mentioned to you the other day, I think that's a disgrace for Labor. They've done a deal with the Greens to get this bill up, a hard cap, whatever that is, a hard cap, an absolute limit on the offsets that big polluters can use. This is where somebody can make a mess over here, but if he's prepared to go and put some money over here to clean up somebody else's mess, he's forgiven this mess. It is so stupid. It's ridiculous. You know, you're either polluting or you're not polluting. It's a stupid idea. 116 coal and gas projects will now not be able to go ahead in a country that prides itself, or should pride itself, on being the most energy-rich, energy-independent country in the world, which translates into cheap electricity. 116 gas and coal projects will now not be able to go ahead thanks to this Labor Greens deal. They have locked this country and everybody in it into higher energy bills. Why? Oh, the urgent move to renewables. Again, I remind you that Australia contributes to global emissions just 1.3%. That's nothing. It certainly is not an emergency. Clearly, the worst decisions that you could possibly imagine being made over the years were made by political parties. I was thinking about this the other day and I thought, why not do a thing on some of the worst of them? What was the worst decision that they made? Leaving aside this climate change nonsense, It would have to be privatisation. And I have to confess to you that at the time Margaret Thatcher was privatising everything, talking about the British disease, which was the way the unions behaved in England, closing everything down and everyone losing his job, and unions causing people to lose their jobs, hardly seems reasonable, does it? Anyway, that's what they were going on with. The Arthur Scargill, you remember him? Who destroyed the coal industry, coal mining industry in the UK. I remember talking to him once. You know, I don't think he had ever shoveled a piece of coal in his life. That wasn't his shtick. His shtick was communism. Turn the system upside down. That was it. But privatisation seemed to be a more efficient way of running stuff. But no, there's some things you can privatise, but other things, essential services, never should a government. After all, we, the people, bought all this stuff in the first place. All these assets are ours. The gas, the electricity, the water, all of that, transport, they're ours. We paid for them. So these guys simply say, oh, we'll sell it and put the money into consolidated revenue so they can waste it somewhere else. That's what happens. Never privatise essential services. Electricity, gas. You know, they even privatised the Lands Office here. Why would you do that? They corporatised Australia Post. Now that was a great success, wasn't it? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Oh dear. As a society, you know you're in trouble when you see a commercial on television which extols and promotes the business of gambling, and then has the honesty or audacity to say, you win some and you lose more. It'd be a great slogan, wouldn't it? You win some and you lose more. This is an ad for Ladbrokes. Can you imagine that? So arrogant the clients, that's the gamblers, will be that they'll go on punting, even though they are being told, quite honestly, by the promoters, you will lose your money. Can anyone be so stupid as to accept that message, adopt it, embrace it? The Institute of Family Studies, after careful research, has discovered that more than 50% of people want this gambling advertising to stop. Another survey showed that there was a slightly lesser number of people who wanted it confined to after 10:30 at night. I don't know. Why would we just tickle the problem? What's the point? Just get rid of gambling advertising. It's a $200 billion business. This is taking money from people who can least afford to lose it. I would never complain about Kerry Packer standing in front of a roulette table and putting $10 million there, because it's his money and he can afford to lose it. But most of us can't. The majority of people don't like gambling advertising. The government should ban it. Oh, and here's a fun fact I'll leave you with. 75% of global poker machines, 75%, ladies and gentlemen, of global poker machines are based in Australia. Go figure. I know we're good at betting on two flies crawling up a wall, but we've got to do something about it. Thank you very much for viewing the Court of Public Opinion, ladies and gentlemen. Pete and I will be back tomorrow. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux. Believe in yourself, and thank you for viewing.